Am I seriously uploading a video during the holidays? Absolutely. So let's chat about one of the best gifts we got this year in the return of Survivor UK. Survivor UK 2023 just finished up, and as everyone's favourite Northern Irish Survivor YouTuber, I feel fully qualified to talk about this series that can be best described as a chaotic train wreck. On the topic of transport, we kick off the new series in a massive cargo ship similar to the opening of Australian Survivor 2017. It honestly felt surreal seeing Survivor back in Britain for the first time in over 20 years, only to be topped by the Joel Dommett being the host. Did Joel host the show perfectly? That might be a bit of a stretch. I feel at points Joel tried to worm jokes awkwardly into situations, simply because he was a known comedian coming into the show. This made serious Joel moments even more awkward by contrast, as he'd been set up as a light-hearted individual, only to switch to a mean presenter at sudden points.
2 people from each tribe will swap over, and you will make that decision yourselves. Right now.
But the host of Survivor is a high prestige, as even identified by Joel Dommett himself pre-series, so I do think if we see more of a serious side to him throughout next season, he'll be more confident in his role. He already has a likability and charm to a T, which is something that makes JLP or Nico from other international survivors such beloved hosts, and I'm sure with more practical experience on the show, we'll have an even better version of Joel. I was actually really impressed with his Survivor knowledge. You can clearly tell he read up on the show, and was very articulate at Tribal Council when trying to decipher contestants' game philosophies. Nevertheless, Joel, in classic Survivor style, starts off the game by asking the cast a few questions with some humorous responses. And to be honest, I am pretty mixed on this cast overall. It is nice seeing all 4 parts of the UK represented, in England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, in a 13-3-1-1 split that mirrors the population percentage of our nation. Plus, with casting now being open for a second season, I hope this trend of getting representation from each country continues, as it's really fun seeing the cultural diversity. One issue on the topic of diversity, in my opinion, is the overrepresentation of individuals from London that make up exactly 1/3 of the cast. Sure, London is a bustling metropolis and the most well-known city within the United Kingdom, but having 6 people from a place that has a population of 8 million, while the UK has 67 million, seems very questionable, and mirrors complaints from Australian Survivor 2017, where a substantial amount of the cast were from Perth. While I do obviously have my issues with the cast itself, I'm actually going to firstly strike them out. This may be biased on my end, but from my experience this has been the kindest and most supportive Survivor cast I have ever met. I've had notable fun conversations with Doug, Ren, Shai, Tanuki, Christopher, Pegleg and Matthew throughout the airing of the season. Honestly, with everyone being so nice, it's hard to bash on this cast, but I mean, I will anyway. Come on, it's me we're talking about. Really, the number one criticism of this cast from online feedback has been the lack of Survivor knowledge, a perspective I also share. Now, to play devil's advocate as a fellow UK person, it is extremely hard to get reliable access to Survivor over here. As a result, it can be challenging for some contestants applying to watch the show consistently, but in my opinion, this is where production should step in and at least give the contestants a comprehensive understanding of the show they're signing up for. Unfortunately for some contestants on the cast, it's clear they didn't put in the necessary research that goes into being a Survivor contestant, on top of the lack of production aid, and that shows on the television programme. I don't want this video to come across like I'm picking on them, but let's take Leilani as an obvious example. Leilani, from her pre-season bio, openly talked about how she didn't realise the show had a social plus strategic dichotomy, so on the show they seem clueless about Survivor staples. She didn't seem to know about what a swap was, and when the merge happened she was so confused, she asked her fellow contestants if it was a good thing.
One tribe.
Is this good?
With some contestants not having a fundamental understanding of the show, it made formulating a long-term or even medium-term game plan nearly impossible. Other contestants seemed to want to make moves, but due to a lack of survivor knowledge and consequently confidence about their gameplay skills, they would instead resort to the safe vote. It also perpetuated this mentality of playing with quote-unquote honour, which caused individuals like Ashley, Christopher, and debatably even Shy to be demonised by their fellow contestants, simply for playing the game. With that being said, since Survivor UK Series 3 has obviously finished, there is a way for Brits to officially watch the show, meaning next season the cast should have a better understanding of core Survivor gameplay mechanics. But I can't help but come out of the season, scratching my head at some of the casting choices, and wondering if this 18-person cast was truly the most viable cast they could have assembled for the show's return for the first time in 20 years. Every episode was also 60 minutes long, which was generally serviceable to tell each individual episode's story and give a majority of the contestants respectable screen time, but 2 episodes were harmed by 60 minutes. The first episode, also known as the marooning, and the final episode. I felt the editors really struggled with the first episode, as most Survivor maroonings are 90 minutes, allowing for a lot more of the dynamics to be better explained. This marooning was all over the place and flew at a breakneck pace, with us going from tribe life 1 minute to a contestant's backstory the next, and there was no proper setup to Richard being the boot. Many individuals in this marooning ended up with only 1 confessional in this episode, or none, including the eventual winner in Matthew. The finale was quite rushed, as well as Hannah's boot not having much explanation, and the final tribal council was only about 10 minutes long, with many jurors barely being able to speak on the televised episode. The upgrade to 60-minute episodes in comparison to the likes of Survivor 44 that only had 43 minutes was a welcomed addition, and overall I felt like I knew the contestants more than other contestants on other modern Survivor seasons. I still think the time could have been better distributed though, as I couldn't help but notice a substantial amount of the time was spent on confessionals talking about how great life was, repetitive storylines, the rewards, and Jules questioning a tribal council. I would rather see more of that time spent in learning about the contestant's strategy moving forward. On the topic of the marooning, the beginning challenge was admittedly really fun to see play out. It featured the contestants having to grab supplies, set them on a raft, and then be the first to make fire at the shore. As an editor myself, I also appreciate the camera work, detailing each challenge, the occasional moving indicator for water-based challenges, and even the names of the challenges being shown on screen. These challenges aren't particularly new, however, with every challenge either being a carbon copy or a very similar version to the ones we've seen in the first 4 Australian Survivor reboot seasons. I don't think it's a bad call, considering you want to start off the franchise strong, and using challenges you know work saves time while entertaining the fans. The problem is when you look at the challenges altogether. Every single pre-merge challenge, barring 2, were based on pure physical strength, with sometimes men facing off against women. This put the cast into a similar situation to the Survivor 43 and 44 casts, where they were heavily incentivized to keep the tribe physically strong to win challenges, causing one of the biggest gender disparities ever on Survivor. After Richard was the first boot, 6 non-males on an 18-person cast were voted out back to back. If any Survivor UK producers are watching, and you can only take one piece of advice on board, I am asking for the sustainability of the franchise to organise challenges pre-merge that require different skill sets. We even see the merge challenges were far less physical based, and in fact, some challenges that involve leg balance actually harmed bigger guys with more muscle. For me, there needs to be more puzzles and balance challenges included to make the game, in my opinion, more fair. That being said, as individual set pieces, the challenges were very impressive. The twists this season were also high variance. There were some I really adored. Hiding advantages in the auction was completely genius, especially when it's a less overpowered advantage like an extra vote. If you've been a fan of the channel, you know the week before the Survivor UK auction, I was asking Survivor US to hide items in their auction. Ultimately, it created a fun heist scene, further accentuated by Christopher, who is just an incredible TV character. The fish dilemma was fun, although this dilemma was basically the Australian Survivor 2016 deceit twist, but I did like the contestants could pick whether to get an idle clue or go for something more substantial. I would have preferred if Ren and Lawrence could have met at the outpost, because Ren did get screwed by Lawrence spilling information they were happy to give up due to them not deceiving their tribe. I'm unequivocally a Ren stan though, so perhaps I take more issue than I should. Then we have the forms of immunity. The idols looked absolutely amazing. There is a reason Joel with the hidden immunity idol is the promo shot for this video. But the idols confused me as they seemed extremely underpowered pre-merge, only lasting a few rounds before expiring, and Doug's idol even expired before he attended his next tribal council because it wasn't time sensitive in relation to the players themselves. This decision is then made even more weird by the fact both Christopher and Nathan's idols seem to be usable up until the final 5, causing weird inconsistencies in the idol rules. The individual immunity necklace looked okay, parts of it looked a little cheap, but I still like the style. Then we have this abomination. There were allegations in the community that the original tribal immunity idol was something different, but was damaged before the airing of the show, forcing production to make a last minute replacement. Yeah, this tribal immunity looks awful. It's literally a log with yellow swimming goggles. Even the contestants looked unimpressed, and I only hope production creates a more impressive relic for the second series. Well, the gameplay pre-swap was pretty rigid, with an established power structure controlling votes, an overwhelming keep the tribe strong mentality, and a lack of clarity for the majority of boots. I actually really enjoyed the fluidity of the post-swap gameplay. We had Ren being blindsided by their own original tribe members due to an idol scare, and Doug plus Pegleg played the swing position impressively by taking out Jess and then Shy, despite being the easy options to pick off. Seeing Lee being the merge boot was satisfying, followed by Christopher saving himself, only to idol out his number 1 ally in Ashley. The Doug and Tanuki blindsides were also incredible, as the two were voted out back to back, with close allies turning on them in a series of plurality votes. I do think after that we reach a similar issue to Survivor 41, where we lose so many big characters at the back half of the pre-merge and at the first half of the merge that the final 7 and on contain somewhat mostly under-edited characters. Lawrence's boot isn't fully explained, and Hannah, despite being largely purpled in the edit, was set up to be this massive jury threat they needed to take out at the final 4. I still do think this is a pretty strong final 3, in spite of Christopher's game getting less respect than it deserves in my opinion. If this was a more game-savvy cast, I could see Christopher getting a few more votes, but I do think he'll have a very interesting arc if he plans to come back for All-Stars. Even though Leilani only played the game a week before the end, I do think she provides an interesting demonstration on both the shortcomings and the successes from playing with your heart on your sleeve. It was an emotive game, but one that, despite its clear flaws, she pitched very well at the end. Matthew was a pretty shocking winner for me, considering his content was somewhat repetitive pre-swap. Plus, he was very timid to make moves before the Tanuki blindside. But in hindsight, I think it perfectly encapsulates this turning from a boy into a man storyline. Sure, it's quite odd seeing a winner having this distinct of a growth arc, but I think for a 21-year-old like Matthew on a cast, with most people being over 25, it's a pretty satisfying story. Finally, let's talk about the overall vibe I got from Survivor UK, because it was, well, it was just odd. For anyone that isn't aware, Survivor UK is run by Bandit Productions, the same company involved with Survivor South Africa. Hence why the outro music in both series are the same. In classic Bandit fashion, the editing of the contestants feels more natural, trying to give the viewers a more realistic look on how the actual dynamics on the island look like. The aforementioned challenges and twists were inspired by Australian Survivor, including Leilani's non-elimination episode, which directly mimics Annalise and Tara's on Australian Survivor 2017. We then have the atrocious pop music choices, similar to Love Island, and the corny one-liners from Joel are basically what Ian Sterling would say. It was always going to be a challenge bringing Survivor to the UK, a country that has historically frowned upon social strategy shows, and while I understand some creative liberties have been made to Survivor, so that's more digestible for a casual UK viewer, this Frankenstein experiment isn't it. Survivor is meant to be a more serious show, and doesn't match the Love Island style of editing, which constantly takes place throughout the season. However, I would say that, for having such a limited time to edit the show and put it together, this was a fun, if not quirky, first installment to the series, but with noticeable flaws that Survivor UK production can crack down on for next year. Did you agree with what I said, or were there things I didn't add to this review that you thought I should talk about? Let me know in the comments below, and subscribe if you enjoyed it. If you're looking to get into Survivor US, I released a massive collaboration last week, featuring 19 creators as we make a dream runner-up cast that you should check out. Nevertheless, have a good day. Peace!
Shout out to Bandit Survivor, great Survivor YouTuber. Yeah, and I'm hoping he's enjoying this season because let's be real, if there's only chance to get on Survivor, this show going well.